In this video, the focus is on wiring up that checkbox, and there are two steps to this. Step one is to make sure the initial value is rendered correctly, displaying whether or not the to-do has ever been completed. And the second step is to actually respond to changes in the checkbox. So let's go ahead and kick things off with that first part. I'm going to break this up into two separate challenges. All I want you to do is check the checkbox if the data shows that the to-do is completed. That's going to happen inside of the code for generate to-do DOM. Now in here, we do have to make sure we actually have a to-do that is completed. Currently, if we look at our data, the completed value for both is false. For the moment, we can dig into this nasty string and try to find one of the completed values. It could take a few seconds to find it. Here it is, false. Let's make sure we delete just false, leaving the curly braces and the colon, and replace it with true. Any change to this that breaks its format is going to cause our code to crash. If you run into an issue like that, just delete the data, add a few more items, and try again. I'm going to hit enter to save things, and now if I refresh the page, we can see that we only have one to-do left to complete, even though there are two there. So this summary is correctly responding to the number of to-dos, but the checkbox for that item should be checked. Take some time to knock that one out by modifying parts of this function. Test your work. You can easily test your work by saving the file and seeing if one of those checkboxes get checked. If you forget how to check a checkbox, just refer back to the previous video where we discussed that. That was a couple of sections ago, in the last section to be exact. All right, pause the video and I'll see you in a second. All right, that one should not have been too bad. All we have to do down below is to set the checkbox's checked property. When we want to read whether or not a checkbox is checked, we use checkbox.checked. If we want to set it, we just set it equal to, in this case, equal to, not a static Boolean true or false, but whatever is stored under to-do.completed. So to-do.completed is going to be true when the checkbox should be checked, so this matches up correctly. There's no need to use the logical not operator. Now if we save things over in the browser, we can see that our to-do is indeed checked. Right here, the to-do with a text of 1 should be checked, and it is. The to-do with a text of 3 shouldn't be checked, and it is not. So by adding that one line, we were able to knock things out. Now we want to move on to the other side of things. This is the much more complex challenge where we're going to be responding to changes in the checkbox. There are 3 steps for this challenge, and it's going to be very similar to what we did for removing a note or removing a to-do. We're just working with a different input and we're taking a different action. Instead of removing something from the array, we're trying to modify an object on the array. We know how to do all of these things. It's putting them together that's the more interesting part of the challenge. So step 1, add an event handler for that checkbox so you can run some code when you check or uncheck the checkbox. The code you're going to run is going to modify the correct object's completed property. So much like we created a remove to do function that took an ID, we can create something like a toggle to do function that also takes an ID. It just goes off and it toggles the correct to do by its ID. Now we're toggling that completed value from either true to false or from false to true. Step 3, save and render. We want to make sure to save the changes to local storage and re-render the application so we can update things like our summary of which to-dos still need to be completed. Now you'll be able to test your work really easily because the entire application should be wired up. You should be able to check and uncheck those boxes, and refreshing the page should actually bring back the exact same data. You should also see that summary change on the fly as you update the amount of to-dos you still have to complete. So pause the video and take as much time as you need to knock this one out. When you're done, come back and click play, and we'll walk through the process together. I'll see you in a second. All right, let's get to it. Step 1 is adding that event handler down below. Where do we have that checkbox? Well, we have it right here where we just set up the checked property, and we're going to use checkbox.addEventListener to add an event listener. Now the event we're listening for the checkboxes is the change event. That's going to fire when the checkbox gets checked or unchecked. Then we can go ahead and set up our function. Now, what are we trying to do in here? Well, the first thing we're going to do is toggle the to-do by its ID. So we can call toggle to do. Toggle to do doesn't yet exist, but we can set it up right now and we'll pass in the to do ID. The next thing we're going to end up doing is saving all of our to-dos. So save to-dos, passing in the to-dos array, and then lastly, re-rendering our list. So I'll call render to-dos, passing in the 2 arguments it expects, our to-dos array and our set of filters. So now all we really need to do is create and fill out toggle to do, and then we'll be all done. Up above, I'm going to do just that. I'll define it right below remove to do. Right here, I'll leave a little comment, toggle the completed value for a given to do. Now you'll notice that I'm not passing in whether the to do should be checked or unchecked. If it was checked, that means the checkbox got unchecked. So I don't need to worry about what the new checkbox value is. I'm simply going to flip it in the data. Right here, const toggle to do equals a function. This function takes the ID, much like remove to do takes an ID, and all we're going to do is set it up to find that object and modify it. So we're going to use find to find the object which we explored from the arrays section right here, const to do equals todos.find is going to return the actual match as opposed to find index, which returns the index of the match. We set up the function, we set up our argument, and then we determine what makes a match. We return true when we've found a match. I'm going to use return todo.id equals the ID passed in. When that condition is true, I've found my match. Now there is a chance we don't find a match at all, so we're only going to toggle the to do if the to do is not equal to undefined. In that situation, what are we going to do? We're going to modify it. So we did find a match. To do dot completed is going to equal to do dot completed, but we want to flip it. So all I'm going to do is use the logical not operator. So get the current value, flip it, and then store that as the new value. And there we have it. This is all we needed to do to complete the challenge. Using stuff we've learned previously in the course, we were able to put it all together to create a real-world application feature. Let's go ahead and save the file and actually test things out. Up above, I'm also going to remove the challenge comments. Perfect. Over here, we have 1 to do complete and 1 incomplete. If I check that second one, I can see I now have 0 to-dos left. If I uncheck both of them, I can see that they both come back. Now, if I toggle hide completed, none go away because none are completed. But if I do start completing some, we can see they actually go away completely. They're hidden behind this filter. So everything is working really, really well. There's no part of the to-dos application that hasn't been wired up to actually get something meaningful done. We have our filters, we have the ability to add new items, and we have management for the existing ones. Now, this can be said about the to-dos app, but we can't quite say that about the notes application. In the notes app, for example, we don't have sorting wired up. And we don't have sorting wired up because we don't even have titles. We can't fill out the note information. So we're going to turn our attention towards focusing on the Notes app for a little bit, and we'll continue on in the very next video. For now, we're all done wiring up our remove buttons and our checkboxes, so stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.